Welcome to this complete guide on pre-competition anxiety for athletes. Every elite athlete feels it before competition. The heart rate spikes. The palms sweat. The mind races. Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian of all time, threw up before the 2008 Beijing Olympics. Not because he was unprepared. He had trained for 4 years specifically for those races. He threw up because his body was doing exactly what it was designed to do. It was mobilizing every available biological resource to help him perform at the absolute highest level possible. And yet, for most athletes, this same biological process becomes a performance destroyer rather than a performance enhancer. The difference is not talent. It is not experience. It is understanding. In this guide, we are going to change your relationship with pre-competition anxiety completely. We will cover the neuroscience of what actually happens in your body before competition, the proven psychological techniques that champions use to transform anxiety into fuel, the specific protocols you can begin implementing in your very next training session, and the long-term mental architecture that separates elite performers from everyone else. Whether you are a competitive athlete, a coach, or a sports parent, this guide will give you a framework for pre-competition anxiety that is grounded in the most current sports science research and proven in practice at the highest levels of competition. Let us begin with the most important reframe in all of sports psychology. Anxiety is not your enemy. Anxiety is your ally. You simply have not been taught how to use it. To master pre-competition anxiety, you first need to understand precisely what is happening inside your body when it occurs. When Usain Bolt crouched into the starting blocks at the 2009 World Championships in Berlin, the race where he ran 9.58 seconds and shattered his own world record, his cortisol and adrenaline levels were significantly elevated. His heart rate was above 100 beats per minute. His palms were sweating. His muscles were receiving increased blood flow. His auditory processing was sharpened. His visual focus was intensified. His reaction speed was enhanced. This is sympathetic nervous system activation. And it is the same biological response in every mammal on Earth. Here is the critical fact that most athletes never learn. Your brain genuinely cannot distinguish between a predator chasing you across the savannah 50,000 years ago and a championship final in a modern stadium. It responds to both with the identical neurochemical cascade. Cortisol floods the bloodstream, mobilizing glucose for immediate energy. Adrenaline sharpens sensory processing and increases reaction speed to its absolute peak. Dopamine narrows and intensifies focus on the task immediately in front of you. Your body is not malfunctioning. It is performing a biological masterpiece of preparation. The problem is never the anxiety itself. The problem is the interpretation. Research from Harvard Medical School shows that when athletes label physical arousal sensations as dangerous, as signs that they cannot cope, performance decreases by an average of 17%. When those same athletes label the identical sensations as preparation, as their body getting ready to perform, performance improves by 14%. The physical sensations are completely identical. Only the meaning changes. And meaning, in athletic performance, changes everything. Simone Biles has spoken extensively about what she calls getting her butterflies to fly in formation. This is an intuitive description of one of the most powerful and well-researched techniques in sports psychology: cognitive reappraisal. Let me explain the science precisely. Because this technique is simple to understand, but requires practice to implement automatically. Cognitive reappraisal is the deliberate act of changing the meaning you assign to an internal state. In the context of pre-competition anxiety, it involves taking the high arousal state of anxiety and relabeling it as the high arousal state of excitement. The research on this technique in athletic contexts is remarkable. A landmark study from Stanford University placed athletes in a high-stakes competitive scenario and instructed them to do one of two things before performing. Group 1 was told to calm themselves down. Group 2 was told to say to themselves, out loud, "I am excited." The calming group performed significantly worse than the excitement reappraisal group. The reason is physiological and important to understand. Anxiety and excitement are both high arousal states. Your heart rate is elevated in both. Your adrenaline is high in both. Moving from anxiety to calm requires your nervous system to travel from high arousal to low arousal, which is neurologically very difficult to accomplish in a short time frame before competition. But moving from anxiety to excitement requires only a relabeling exercise. The physiology stays exactly the same. Only the cognitive interpretation changes. The Stanford athletes who said "I am excited" performed 22% more accurately than those who tried to calm down. They were not less anxious in any measurable physiological sense. They simply had a more productive relationship with their anxiety. Implementing cognitive reappraisal requires deliberate practice. You cannot introduce this technique for the first time in a championship final and expect it to work. You must rehearse it in training sessions, in low-stakes competitions, in practice scenarios specifically designed to provoke anxiety. The goal is to make the reframe completely automatic. Novak Djokovic is famous among sports commentators and sports psychologists alike for his between-point breathing rituals. Watch any Djokovic match closely and you will notice that after a difficult point, especially after an unforced error, he takes a specific, deliberate breath before returning to position. This is not a nervous habit. It is a precisely trained neurological regulation technique that Djokovic has practiced thousands of times to the point of complete automation. The technique is called the physiological sigh, and it is the fastest known method for activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest system that directly counteracts the fight or flight stress response. Here is precisely how it works, and why it is measurably more effective than standard deep breathing techniques. The physiological sigh involves a double inhale through the nose. The first breath is a normal inhale, immediately followed, without exhaling, by a second shorter inhale to achieve full lung inflation. Then a long, slow exhale through the mouth, ideally 2 to 3 times the duration of the inhale phase. The neuroscience behind this sequence is elegant. During intense exercise and psychological stress, the tiny air sacs in the lungs called alveoli begin to partially collapse. This reduces gas exchange efficiency and directly increases feelings of breathlessness, panic, and loss of control. The double inhale re-inflates these alveoli. The extended exhale stimulates the vagus nerve, which runs from the brainstem through the heart and diaphragm, triggering immediate parasympathetic activation. Research from the Huberman Lab at Stanford University shows that the physiological sigh reduces heart rate and cortisol levels measurably faster than any other breathing technique studied to date. The entire sequence takes under 30 seconds. Djokovic uses it between nearly every point in a 5-set match. Build it into your pre-competition ritual and practice it until it operates completely automatically under pressure. Roger Federer's pre-match routine has been documented in extraordinary detail by sports journalists, his coaching staff, and sports psychologists who have studied him over his remarkable 20-year career at the top of professional tennis. The routine begins at a precisely determined time before every single match. His music playlist is consistent across competitions. His physical warm-up sequence follows the exact same order. His pre-match meal is consumed at the same interval before play begins. Even the sequence in which he puts on his clothing and prepares his rackets is consistent. To a casual observer, this level of routine might seem like superstition or obsessive behavior. To a sports psychologist, it is a masterpiece of deliberate nervous system management built over decades. Rituals work through a neurological principle called contextual anchoring. When a behavior is repeated consistently enough in the same context and followed reliably by the same neurological and emotional state, the brain forms a strong predictive association. Federer's ritual, performed thousands of times before competitive matches at every level from junior competition through Grand Slam finals, has become an extraordinarily powerful neurological on-switch for competitive readiness. His nervous system has learned through repetition when these specific actions are performed in this specific sequence. What follows is competition at the highest level. By the time Federer walks onto the court, his brain is already in the precise state it needs to be in. The ritual is not causing his readiness. It is signaling his readiness. Designing your own pre-competition ritual requires experimentation, patience, and systematic refinement. Start by identifying the 60 to 90-minute window before your competition. Experiment with music. Test different physical activation sequences. Identify the self-talk cues that best focus your attention on execution. Build a sequence. Test it exhaustively in training. Refine it based on what you observe. Give it a minimum of 30 competitive repetitions before making any evaluation. Bob Bowman, Michael Phelps's coach for over 2 decades and one of the most successful coaches in Olympic history, described their visualization practice using a single phrase: running the videotape every single night before sleep. Phelps was given precise instructions to play 2 mental videos. The first was the perfect race video. Every conceivable detail was included and rehearsed. The feel of the water temperature during warm-up. The sound of the crowd settling as he approached the starting block. The weight of his goggles. The sensation of his body entering the water at the start. Each stroke. Each turn, each breath pattern, each wall approach, all of it rehearsed in precise, internally experienced, multi-sensory detail. The second video was the disaster race. His goggles fill with water at the start. He cannot see clearly for the entire race. The lane rope moves unexpectedly and contacts his arm at the 50-meter mark. Something goes wrong with his competition suit. In each disaster scenario, Phelps was required to visualize himself not just experiencing the problem but adapting to it, continuing to race, and finishing as strongly as possible given the adversity. This second video is what made Phelps psychologically unbreakable in competition. At the 2008 Beijing Olympics, his goggles actually did fill completely with water at the start of the 200-meter butterfly final. He was completely blind. He could not see the wall approaching at either end. He had no reference points for distance or timing. But he had already swum that race hundreds of times in his mind under those exact conditions. He was not panicking. He was not improvising. He was executing a practiced response plan. He won the gold medal and broke the world record. Visualization practice is not positive thinking. It is mental rehearsal. These are fundamentally different activities with fundamentally different neurological effects. Let me now give you the complete, structured protocol that elite athletes use to manage pre-competition anxiety from start to finish. This is not theoretical. It is derived from the documented practices of multiple Olympic champions and the sport's psychology research that has validated each component. The protocol has 3 parts and takes approximately 30 minutes in total. Part 1 is the awareness phase, performed 90 minutes before competition. Find a quiet space for 5 minutes. Close your eyes. Do a complete body scan from feet to head, simply observing where physical tension is being held. Rate your anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10. Write down or mentally note the specific thought content generating the most anxiety. This awareness step is non-negotiable. Anxiety that is not consciously acknowledged operates through your performance unconsciously. Naming it brings it under cognitive control. Part 2 is the regulation phase, performed 60 minutes before competition. Begin with 3 complete physiological sighs as described earlier to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Follow with 5 minutes of progressive muscle relaxation, systematically tensing and releasing each major muscle group from feet to face. Then perform 5 minutes of internal visualization, the ideal performance scenario in full sensory detail. Conclude with 3 instructional self-talk cues specific to your key technical focus for this competition. Part 3 is the activation phase, performed 15 to 20 minutes before competition. Your ritual music, your physical activation sequence, your confidence self-talk, specific, evidence-based statements about your preparation and capability. A final 2-minute visualization of entering the competitive arena performing at your absolute best. Done consistently. This 30-minute protocol restructures how your nervous system experiences pre-competition arousal. Michael Jordan said, "I have missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I have lost almost 300 games. 26 times I have been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I have failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed." What Jordan understood at a level most athletes never reach is that anxiety, adversity, and the discomfort of high-stakes competition are not obstacles to excellence. They are the raw materials from which excellence is actually constructed. Every elite athlete who has ever been interviewed extensively about their relationship with pre-competition anxiety arrives at the same insight through different language. The anxiety is not something to be conquered. It is something to be used. This is what sports psychologists call the mental athlete mindset. And it represents a fundamental shift in how you relate to every challenging aspect of competition. Nervous becomes ready. Pressure becomes privilege. The elevated heart rate becomes confirmation that you are alive and engaged at the level that matters. The sweating palms become evidence that your body understands the significance of this moment. Building this mindset is not a one-session intervention. It is a long-term training process that works in parallel with your physical training. Practice cognitive reappraisal consistently in training sessions. Use the physiological psi protocol in every training session that involves any element of pressure or discomfort. Build your pre-competition ritual and practice it every single competition and training day. Implement the 3-part anxiety protocol in the weeks before your major competitions. Conduct post-competition debriefs that explicitly address anxiety management. What helped? What did not? What you will refine. The mental athlete is built the same way the physical athlete is built. Through consistent, progressive, deliberate practice over time. Begin today. For the complete mental performance course, worksheets, and one-on-one coaching, visit TheMentalSport.com. Train the mind. Win the game.